parents do for your mom to be listening to WBLS?
I mean, mom, I had a very young mom. My mom had me at 19. She was a stay-at-home mom.
Nice.
My dad fixed
19.
19.
Okay.
My dad fixed cars for a living and then ended up buying the repair shop, or taking over the management of the repair shop, which was not far from here. It was on 54th between 9th and 10th. But basically, there was always music. It was music in the house, decent record collection, although a lot of it tended towards disco and Crystal Gale and things like that. But music was in the air, and my mom, I think very naturally, quietly, my mom was, the way my parents met, on that block of 54th between 9th and 10th, there was also, I think it's what later became the Hit Factory, was a TV studio where they filmed Soul Train, and my mom was the front desk clerk for like 6 months.
Well, Sony Studios was there, so
it was one of those buildings. I forget if it was one on the right or the left.
But if it was back then, it was probably the old Hit Factory, which was further up 54th Street.
Right.
That's what I think it's that.
The older one.
She was the front desk clerk at that building while Soul Train was being taped there, and my parents met on that block.
That's crazy.
But it was always sort of in her mind. But my mom stayed at home. We were young. She was young. She wasn't working.
And it made sense, man, because if you look back, man, it was for many, it was a natural transition from disco to hip hop.
Oh, of course. And I think my mom is still probably a little vexed about how this became my life necessarily, but she understands, like, on a kind of aesthetic level. She understands. I think she was still, even when I was like 27, she was like, "So you're gonna go to law school, right? Like, when's you're gonna get around to that?" And I was like, "No, I think this is what I do. This is what I do." But yeah, I mean, I was never discouraged from liking it. It was hard to find, certainly in those first few years, but I was never discouraged from liking it.
So in high school, as you're finding this music and as you're absorbing this music and as this music is becoming a part of you, what are your thoughts in terms of what your life is going to be? Are you convinced at that point that your life is going to be music?
Here's the thing. I didn't grow up around people who were in the industry. I didn't grow up around people who worked at magazines or worked in newspapers. I think
at the time, though, to cut you off, none of us knew people in the industry.
It's just one of those things where I didn't even know those were jobs.
Right.
Like, it didn't even occur to me that, like, when you say that's what my life was going to be like, I knew I would listen to that. But, like, you could be an accountant and listen around me. At least you could be a lawyer. You could be a mechanic, all those things. I didn't even know writing for real was a job, probably till college.
Right.
And even in college, I would get copies of Source, and I'd be like, those guys write for free. That's crazy.
Why'd you think they wrote for free?
Because I had literally no context. Right. I had zero there were things I was very smart about and things I was totally clueless about.
Right.
And it just occurred to me, I was like, well, I like rap, and I wrote for the school paper, so I was like, I guess these guys just wrote for some school and then they're friends, and they put this thing out.
Right.
Especially the Source in, like, 93 or 94 was, kind of thin.
Yeah.
It wasn't like Rolling Stone.
It was black and white.
It was black and white.
Very early, the super early ones. But it didn't occur to me it was a career. And I think I started writing for magazines while I was in college.
Well, from what I understand, you went to Harvard.
I did, yeah.
And you started writing kind of accidentally, or you fell into writing because you felt that the writers there at the time really didn't know.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, I think like anyone who grows up in hip hop, you look around and you're like, those people are doing it wrong. And it doesn't matter what they're doing. They could be writing, they could be lawyers, you just know that they're doing it a conventional way and you want to do it a different way.
Yeah.
So when I walked in the school paper, everybody's reviewing REM records. And I was like, are you guys kidding me? Like what? So,
and is there any other interest, anybody else having any interest in covering, say, the Run DMC or the Tribe Called Quest, whatever was hot at the time? None at all.
In my year, there were like 3 of us who did the radio station. Like I did a radio station. There were like 3 of us maybe. By the time I was a senior, I was the only one left of those 3.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't going the other way. It wasn't coming around the other way.
No, I mean, after I left, I think maybe 2 or 3 years later, it started to pick up and more people would sign on. But rap was very marginalized on the Harvard radio station. We only had 1 night a week out of 7, and like indie rock had the other 6 nights. But I was the only one who was, at that point, I was like, I'm holding this. I felt like I was holding it down.
That's how hip hop. That's how hip hop is on terrestrial radio now.
Yeah. What was your DJ name, man?
The show was called The Best Kept Secret, and Diamond D was my theme song. Right. And just my DJ name was lowercase J, capital D, capital E, with like a terrible fake graffiti handle.
Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
JD?
Yeah.
JD. No Plastic Dreams.
No.
Okay.
No.
So how was it writing at Harvard, man?
I mean,
what was the response?
I think it became very clear that I was writing for like 15 people. Like the paper, I wrote for the weekly paper. There's a daily paper and a weekly paper. I wrote for the weekly paper, which is kind of like the Village Voice equivalent.
Right.
It became very clear that there were like secret rap fans like sprinkled around campus, but you would not see them. Like I have very vivid memories of walking around the main yard my freshman year in like size 48 jeans, unlaced Timbs, and headphones like twice the size of these, and people looked at me like I was insane.
So
I met a girl at the 5-year reunion, and she was like, "We all wanted to talk to you, but we were scared because you had all those big headphones on."
Did you ever walk around with a boombox?
No, that was a little.
That was
this
a
is
little-
93,
that was a little-
97.
now you say secret fans. Like, was there kind of a sense of shame?
I
for
think
like the student body.
Here's the thing. I think so my year at Harvard, there's maybe 1,600 or 1,650 kids in that year. And then there's 4 years of kids. Of that, maybe like 80 to 90 are black kids.
Right.
Those kids, no problem.
Right.
But it wasn't necessarily like they're out like promoting shows or whatever. I remember when I was either a junior or senior, there were a bunch of freshmen who like started rapping, and that was like people's minds were
It was
blown.
phenomenal. Were they
we
good?
were like,
were they good?
no. No, peace to Keith and Sharifa though. I'm scarred.
They're
by one
lawyers
of-
now.
They make way more money than I do.
Okay.
Keith, I remember there was this one kid, and his his ultimate line was like the music drops, and he's like, "If my dick was gold, I would be filthy rich." And like all the older black girls who were juniors and seniors were like,
That's horrendous.
the girl I was sitting next to, she was like, "They have 5 of my dollars, and I'm never getting them back." So mad. But this is like 95, and it was still a little weird.
Right.
And I think just from
Do you
talking,
keep in touch with these guys?
I keep in touch loosely, like
Right.
Facebook touch.
Okay.
I'm definitely the only one who does this.
Fully immersed.
Some people work kind of in entertainment and some,
Right.
but certainly no one is like performing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Now I understand when you were a student that you actually turned down two.
Oh, you did your research.
I do my research.
God damn.
man. You turned down 2
Get ready for
internships.
combat.
I did.
One
Phenomenal.
at Jive Records,
Uh-huh.
and one at the
Vibe.
newly birthed Vibe.
This is summer 94, summer after my freshman year. And like I said, I had become very accustomed to making my own destiny.
Right.
So it's not like, if you want to be an investment banker, someone from Morgan Stanley comes to campus and like you show up with your resume and you throw your suit on, you just like, "Hey, I'm John, I'm an economics major, I'm interested in this, I'm not a fuck up." They hire you,
Right,
or they don't.
right.
No one from Jive Records is coming to campus, and this is Jive circa like UGK era. It's like they're not looking for me. I'm not the guy they're looking for.
Right.
Same thing with Vibe. I mean, what I did to get those internships was I made a Maxell UR90 dub of my college radio show. I had like a terrible resume, and I basically wrote a cover letter, and I sent it to probably 10 record labels, to Vibe, to The Source, and I was just sort of like, I'm gonna see what happens.
Right.
I have no idea. I get interviews. I come to New York.
Do you remember who you interviewed? Or
I interviewed with whoever was Quincy's assistant, whose name escapes me at the moment, but it was Quincy's assistant at the time. And at Jive, it was someone in marketing. It was like sort of like a short white dude, but I can't place the name.
now, are you excited as you're going through this process?
I was like, I felt like I really had done something.
Right.
I was like, I have this weird bullshit tape, and like I just
and now you're in the doors in Manhattan, and
It was like that moment in Juice where like Q passes
Yeah,
off the
yeah,
tape
yeah.
to Queen Latifah. I made it. It's getting the door. And then I go to my mom and I said, "Well, Mom, I have these 2 job opportunities, these 2 summer things." And she's like, "That's great. How much do they pay?" And I was like, they pay 0.
Right.
But it's cool because we live in New York and I can just take the train and it's gonna be real cheap and I'll eat pizza for lunch and dinner and it's not gonna be that expensive.
now are you understanding at this point the foot in the door concept? How important it is to get the foot?
Not even
right.
slightly.
Okay.
Not even slightly. I think I was so kind of blinded that I was just thinking, I'm gonna make this happen.
Right. Mhm.
And if I can make it happen today, I'll make it happen tomorrow if it doesn't work out. And my mom was like, "That is not happening."
She shut you down.
She was just basically like, people have jobs, and when you have a job, a thing that's special about having a job is you get paid, and you are a grown-up, so you should get a job that pays.
So she didn't understand the concept of interning somewhere to get your foot.
Yeah, it's like my family has like it was all super foreign to us. Like there's no one in my family really even was close to this.
I mean, your
world.
dad works with his hands. Your dad does a job.
I come from like the working middle class, basically. So she's used to seeing $1, and my mom certainly, after having not worked, I think for many years when I was young, she was getting back into the workforce. So I think the last thing she wants me to do is go out and spend 3 months working for who knows who, and not maybe getting a good experience, maybe not, but definitely not getting any money.
Right.
So
Now, how'd you feel?
I was upset.
Right.
Oh, I was definitely upset, and I took an office job for the summer.
But let me ask you though, because at this point you're in college, you've already absorbed some of the rebelliousness that is hip hop.
Sure.
Why did you listen to her?
I love my mother.
Right.
Like, just straight up. Like, I love my mother, and I feel like my mom is incredibly wise. Looking back, I would have liked her to have a little more perspective on what that would have meant career-wise. But that was also so early in the game that it's not like, oh, if I intern for Vibe, then I'll get a job.
Right.
Vibe was so new. You're like, maybe Vibe's not even going to exist in 18 months.
Right.
And I was so outside of the media. I mean, look, in Boston, there was a magazine called The Fever. That was like what was really good.
Right.
The best part about The Fever was they would turn "You Know What I'm Saying" into an acronym, so it'd be YKWIS.
Oh.
So I remember there was a Mobb Deep interview in there one time, and literally it was just like 100 YKWIS. It was great journalism.
I mean,
But it was that's in my mind. I was like, well, these are the rap magazines, these are the rap labels. I did the best I could to try to get in. My mom says I need to earn a check. She probably knows what
And
she's
you
talking
respected
about.
your mom.
I did. I still do.
And in a sense, I think she instilled in you values that most of us that come in the industry don't really understand, because a lot of us come in this industry and we get duped. I don't want to say dupe, but we fall into that internship mentality, and then we put the days and the months and the years, and then, some of us at a certain point after you've paid your dues don't step up and say, yo, I got to get paid.
Well, and certainly I think nowadays that's even more true, because there's so many more. I mean, look, it was 1994. There were like 7 places you could work, maybe 12.
Right.
In 2012 or 2013, there's hundreds. You can go intern for whatspoppin.net.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
you could be an intern for your own label
Exactly.
on some real meta shit like
And
like,
the CEO.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
the CEO and the owner.
I bet.
CEO.
Do you have an intern?
President and
I
intern.
am the intern
You
for
are the intern.
DallasPen.com. Yes.
All right. Okay.
So
I'm the president and the customer.